The ink that saved a billion-dollar empire was never seen, until a janitor's son pointed a flashlight at it. It was always too cold in the supply room, not the kind of cold that pricks the skin, but the kind that creeps into the bones, quiet, industrial, and indifferent. Boxes stacked to the ceiling breathed in recycled air. Metal shelves groaned under the weight of forgotten things. Light came from a single buzzing fixture above the inventory table, flickering faintly every few seconds like it, too, was growing tired of being here. This is where Eli Moreno worked. 14 years old, too thin for his age, skin the color of wind-blown adobe, and eyes that belonged to someone much older. He worked quietly after school, folding cardboard, labeling packages, and pushing carts down cement aisles. He never spoke unless spoken to. Most didn't notice he was there. They saw only a boy in second-hand sneakers with a name tag that said Junior Staff. But if they had watched him closely, watched his hands move with measured precision, watched how he read the serial numbers twice and cross-referenced without being told, watched how he wrote things down in a small, leather-bound notebook he never let anyone see, they might have sensed something unusual. They might have asked questions. They didn't. Eli's mother, Alma, cleaned the upstairs offices at LuxGen, a private biomedical tech company that had come to their dying New Mexico town 2 years ago, promising jobs and futures. Eli had started working the warehouse 6 months after his father died in a scaffolding collapse at a chemical plant near Deming. His mother didn't cry much. She cleaned floors in silence and prayed with her hands clasped tightly, as if afraid God might slip away if she loosened her grip. Eli stopped praying altogether. Instead, he started building things. A lens from a broken projector, a mirror from an old makeup kit, a flashlight stripped and rewired with copper filament. His homemade UV light source wasn't pretty, but it worked. He used it to study paper, tape, adhesive. He was fascinated by things that couldn't be seen. Fluorescence, absorption, spectral emission, things his science teachers didn't cover because they assumed kids like Eli wouldn't care. But Eli didn't stop. Not when they called him slow. Not when the school cut the science budget. Not when the other kids asked him why he always smelled like cardboard and rubbing alcohol. What he wanted, needed, was to understand the unseen. It happened on a Tuesday. He was sorting new deliveries when he found it. Just one box that felt wrong. It was unmarked, unlike the others. No shipping label, no barcode, no destination. Just brown paper, folded tight, sealed with black filament tape. He turned it over. No weight stamp, no return slip. Just a small, almost imperceptible mark near the corner. A triangle, etched faintly into the cardboard. Eli knew symbols. This one didn't belong to any department. He looked around. No one near. Gently, he peeled the tape. Inside were sheafs of blank white paper. No watermark. No company header. And yet each page had a texture, smooth but fibrous, like someone had bleached them by hand. He held one under the warehouse light. Nothing. Then he held it under his pocket-built UV beam, and the page lit up. Faint letters emerged in ghostly blue. A title. Project Helix. NDA copy. Authorized signatures only. He blinked, then looked again. There were names, date stamps, contractual language outlining a technology transfer worth $1.3 billion, set to be executed under complete visual encryption. The signatures were real. The content was staggering. This wasn't just paper. This was a buried transaction. Someone, somewhere, had written an entire corporate agreement in invisible ink. And that someone had hidden it here. Eli stared at the document as the UV glow faded, leaving it blank once more. A coldness crept down his arms. He knew the lab team at LuxGen had been working on bioreactive inks. a class of compounds that could remain invisible under standard light but fluoresce at precise UV wavelengths. They were intended for medical diagnostics, not corporate secrecy. But this paper didn't belong to diagnostics. This was deception. He tucked the sheets back into the box, sealed it again, and logged it manually in his notebook, not in the company system. Then, without a word, he placed the box behind a row of obsolete centrifuges and returned to his folding station like nothing had happened. But something had changed. That night, he told no one, not even his mother. She came home coughing harder than usual, her uniform soaked in ammonia. He cooked soup and let her rest. He sat at the kitchen table afterward, turning over each piece of the mystery in his head. Why use invisible ink for a legal contract? Who signed it? Was the company selling something in secret? And why hide it in a storage room where no one was supposed to look? He reopened his notebook. On the inside cover, he wrote a single sentence. The truth glows under the right light. He circled it. Twice. The next morning, 2 men in suits showed up at the warehouse. They wore badges, but not company ones. Inventory audit, one said. Randomized. Mind if we look around? The floor manager didn't blink. Take your time. Eli, folding boxes in the corner, watched silently. The men moved fast. Too fast for auditors. They knew where to go. They pulled boxes at random until they reached the back row near the centrifuges. One of them stopped. A pause. A subtle smile. Then he lifted the unmarked box. Eli felt his stomach twist. He had 20 seconds to decide. He could speak up, ask who they were, say something, but no one would listen to the janitor's son, so he stayed silent. And in that silence, something inside him began to burn, not with fear, but with clarity. He needed help, but not from the company, not from adults who wouldn't believe. He needed someone who understood what invisible things meant, someone who believed that seeing wasn't always knowing. And so, later that week, with the box long gone and the warehouse back to normal, Eli took a folded copy of the contract he'd secretly UV scanned and walked 3 miles through the desert to the edge of the town. There, in a weathered trailer perched on concrete blocks, lived a man everyone had forgotten. A man who once taught graduate physics at Stanford. A man who spoke to no one, and claimed that the truth could only be seen in the dark. The desert was not silent. It hummed, low and constant, like the inside of an old transformer. Wind swept grains of sand against rusted fences. Power lines cracked faintly overhead, sending their vibrations into the evening sky. Eli walked this path many times before, past empty lots, past abandoned storefronts, past houses that still bore sun-bleached for sale signs from 10 years ago. But this time he carried something folded deep inside his jacket pocket. A page that looked blank to the naked eye, but under ultraviolet light revealed signatures worth more than the town, more than the county, more than all the lives that had passed through this desert in a century. He stopped before a trailer on cinder blocks. It leaned slightly to the left, as though the earth had tired of holding it straight. The windows were taped with plastic sheeting, the door reinforced with an iron bar. On the porch, a collection of old journals lay stacked beneath a tarp, their spines curling from heat. This was the home of Professor Samuel Halberd. Once a name in journals of applied spectroscopy and Journal of Photonic Materials, now reduced to whispers in a desert town. A man who once debated Nobel laureates, now buying beans on credit at the corner store. Some said he drank away his tenure. Others claimed he had fought the wrong battle with the wrong board. Few cared enough to know which story was true. Eli didn't care either. He only knew this. Halberd had been obsessed with light. Not the kind you see, but the kind you don't. He climbed the porch steps, each one groaning beneath his weight. He knocked once. No answer. He knocked again. A voice, rough and low. "What do you want?" "It's Eli. From town." A pause. "The janitor's boy." "Yes, sir." Locks clattered. The door opened a hand's width. A pair of eyes, bloodshot but sharp, studied him. "You're too young to sell me insurance," Halberd said. "I found something," Eli replied, steady though his heart pounded. He slipped the folded page from his pocket. "Something written with invisible ink." The door closed. For a moment, Eli thought the professor had dismissed him outright. Then the locks moved again. The door swung wide enough to admit him. The inside smelled of dust, solder, and stale coffee. Piles of books leaned against the walls, their titles spanning optics, chemistry, quantum mechanics, and legal theory. On the table lay the scattered remains of old instruments, diffraction gratings, broken photodiodes, and lenses clouded with scratches. Halberd gestured at a chair. It wobbled as Eli sat. "Show me," the old man said. Eli placed the sheet on the table. To Halberd, it looked like nothing but paper. Then Eli reached into his backpack, pulled out his makeshift UV torch, and switched it on. A cone of violet-blue light bathed the page, and slowly, like a photograph in developer fluid, the words emerged. Halberd leaned forward, his lips parted, then pressed tight again. He traced the letters with one trembling finger without touching them. "This ink," he whispered. "This spectral response. Where did you get this?" Eli swallowed. "Warehouse. In an unmarked box." "You shouldn't have taken it." "I didn't. I copied one page. The rest, they came back for it." Halberd's eyes narrowed. "They?" "Men in suits, not auditors. They knew exactly where to look." The professor leaned back in his chair, staring at the glowing page as though it might catch fire. "So they are using it after all," he muttered. "Using what?" Halberd looked at him for the first time, fully, with the intensity of a man reawakened. "Helix ink. We developed it 5 years ago. A polymer-bound bioreactive substrate. It absorbs in the ultraviolet spectrum between 350 and 400 nanometers, then emits at a narrow peak around 430. Invisible under visible light, permanent under UV. We designed it for medical diagnostics, tumor markers, pathogen signatures. Things you want to stay invisible until tested. But the executives wanted more. Contracts, secrets, patents hidden in plain sight. He rubbed his face with both hands. "I told them it would be abused. I told them no science can survive in shadows." Eli watched the man, his words both alien and familiar. He understood enough. They had turned science meant to heal into a tool for deception. "Why hide a contract?" Eli asked quietly. "Because some signatures," Halberd said, "are not meant for daylight." Silence hung heavy. Outside, the desert wind pressed against the trailer walls. Inside, the ultraviolet glow still traced the forbidden words. Halberd finally exhaled. "You said they came for the box. Did they see you with this?" "No." "Good." He leaned closer, voice grave. "Then listen to me, boy. You've stumbled into something larger than either of us. This paper is proof that an empire is being built in darkness, and they will bury anyone who shines light on it." Eli should have felt fear. Instead, he felt clarity, the same clarity he felt the moment the page glowed blue beneath his light. He didn't want to expose anyone. He didn't want to fight corporations. He only wanted to understand. But now, understanding itself was dangerous. "What should I do?" he asked. Halberd studied him, the corners of his mouth twisting as if in pain. "Most would tell you to burn it. Forget it. Protect your mother. Keep your head down." "And you?" "I will tell you the truth," Halberd said. His voice was low but steady. "Knowledge, once revealed, cannot be unseen. You already crossed the threshold. The only way forward is to learn more than they think you can." That night, the professor pulled a dusty binder from beneath a pile of broken oscilloscopes. Its cover read Optical Detection Techniques. He laid it in front of Eli. "If you want to survive this," he said, "you must learn to see the unseen, not just with lamps and lenses, but with the mind. Do you know the principle of Raman scattering?" Eli shook his head. "Then we begin there." And so began a strange apprenticeship. The first lesson lasted until midnight. Halberd spoke of photons colliding with molecules, shifting frequency by tiny amounts, carrying with them the fingerprints of matter itself. He sketched diagrams on torn paper bags, showing how invisible structures could be mapped by the colors they scattered. Eli listened, wide-eyed, every word carving into his memory. The boy who folded boxes by day was now unraveling the spectrum by night. Before he left, Halberd gave him one last warning. "They will return for more," he said, nodding at the folded page. "And when they do, you must decide. Are you merely a boy in a warehouse, or the custodian of truth?" Eli stepped back into the desert air, the sky a canvas of silent stars. His mother was waiting at home, weary from her shift. The warehouse would still be cold tomorrow, but tonight, for the first time, he felt the warmth of something different. Purpose. And in his pocket, the invisible ink still whispered its dangerous light. The desert at dawn had its own kind of silence. It was not the silence of emptiness, but of waiting. Coyotes retreating into canyons, mesquite bending to a morning breeze, the horizon painted in pale fire. For Eli, the silence felt like a warning. He had carried a secret too heavy for a boy, and now it pressed against his ribs with every step back toward the warehouse. He had hidden the copied page deep beneath the floorboard of his room, wrapped in plastic. His mother had not asked why he stayed out late the night before. She had simply kissed his forehead, weary but tender, before falling into a sleep heavy with exhaustion. He lay awake long after, replaying Halberd's words. Knowledge, once revealed, cannot be unseen. Now, as he approached the gates of Luxgen, the sight of the warehouse felt different. Once it had been only concrete and cold air. Now it was a vault of secrets, each box and barcode a mask for something greater. Inside, the atmosphere had shifted. Supervisors moved briskly, whispering. Two men in tailored suits walked the aisles with clipboards, but Eli recognized them at once, the same men from before. Their shoes gleamed too brightly, their eyes searched too sharply. Auditors did not search, they hunted. One of them stopped near the back shelves where the unmarked box had been. His lips curved into a smile when he found nothing there. Eli kept his head down, taping cartons, but every nerve in his body pulsed. He knew. They were looking for proof. Proof he had already taken. "Boy," one of the men called. His voice was smooth, rehearsed. "You work here every day?" "Yes, sir." "You see all the deliveries?" "Yes, sir." The man crouched so their eyes met. His cologne smelled sharp, like alcohol masked with cedar. "And do you remember all of them?" Eli hesitated. "I remember what the system shows." The man studied him a moment too long, then smiled again. "Good boy." He straightened, motioning his partner. "Let's keep moving." Eli exhaled only when they turned the corner. That afternoon, while others went to lunch, Eli stayed behind, stacking boxes in silence. He pressed his palm against the steel shelves as though grounding himself. He thought of the contract glowing under ultraviolet light, the ink alive with secrets. He thought of Halberd's warning. Are you merely a boy in a warehouse, or the custodian of truth? The words felt heavy now. He had no plan, no allies except an aging professor in a broken trailer. What could a boy and a disgraced scientist do against men in suits, men who moved with the confidence of power? Yet the page in his floorboard proved something undeniable. There was more here than paper and ink. There was betrayal. That night, Eli returned to Halberd's trailer. The professor was bent over a cracked spectrometer, its wires exposed like veins. He didn't look up. You were followed? No. Good. He gestured to the table. Sit. We continue. Eli pulled out his notebook, pages already filled with diagrams of light waves and chemical structures. Halberd glanced at them, then gave a curt nod of approval. Tonight we talk about permanence, he said. Every ink fades, even invisible ink. But Helix ink does not. Do you know why? Eli shook his head. Because it binds to the cellulose at a molecular level, not merely resting on the fibers but becoming one with them. The fluorescence is built into the bond itself. You can burn the paper, soak it, shred it. It will still fluoresce under the right spectrum. That is why your page is dangerous. It cannot be erased. Eli's pen stopped mid-sentence. So if anyone finds it, they will know. The boy's stomach tightened. Then what do we do? Halberd looked at him long, then sighed. The question is not what we do. The question is what you are willing to risk. Truth demands cost. For days, Eli lived between two worlds. In the warehouse, he was silent, folding boxes, watching men in suits scan the shelves with predatory precision. At night, he sat by the professor's lamp, learning how photons carried secrets and how molecules betrayed themselves under scattered light. But knowledge could not stay hidden forever. It happened late Friday. As Eli left the warehouse, one of the suited men stepped from the shadows near the gate. "Walk with me," he said. Eli froze. "Just a boy," the man continued almost kindly, "but a clever one. You notice things, don't you?" He placed a hand on Eli's shoulder, guiding him down the dirt path. "Tell me, did you happen to see a box a few days ago? A box that didn't belong?" Eli's throat tightened. His instinct was to deny, but the man's grip pressed like iron. "You see," the man whispered, "what's inside that box was not meant for you, or anyone. Return it, and we forget this conversation. Fail, and—" He let the silence complete the threat. Eli forced himself to meet his eyes. "I don't know what you're talking about." The man studied him, then chuckled softly. "Good boy." He released his shoulder and walked away. Eli stood alone, trembling. That night, at Halberd's table, he recounted the encounter. The professor leaned back, eyes narrowing. "They suspect you." "I told them nothing." "Doesn't matter. Once suspicion takes root, it grows. You must decide soon, Eli. Do you bury this secret, or do you shine a light no one can deny?" Eli thought of his mother coughing, scrubbing floors in silence. He thought of his father's empty chair at the kitchen table. He thought of the desert, waiting in its patient silence. "I can't bury it," he whispered. Halberd's eyes glimmered in the lamplight. "Then you must prepare for war, boy. Not of guns or fists, but of light and proof." The old man opened a metal case. Inside lay fragments of instruments, lenses, diodes, prisms. "Together, we will build something they cannot argue with. A device that reveals the ink, records it, proves it beyond denial. If they bury words in shadow, we will burn them with light. Eli touched the cool glass of a salvaged prism. For the first time, the fear inside him shifted, not gone, but tempered by purpose. He understood now. He was no longer just holding a page. He was holding a weapon of truth. The trailer became their workshop. By day, Eli folded boxes under the fluorescent buzz of the warehouse. By night, he bent over broken instruments, guided by Halberd's gravel-rough voice and a lamp that flickered against the trailer walls. The desert outside stayed still, listening, as Boy and Professor pieced together fragments of light. The project had no blueprint, no budget, no sponsor, only scraps. A salvaged prism from an overhead projector, a lens from a discarded microscope, a CCD sensor pried from an old camera. Halberd's hands shook when he soldered wires, so Eli steadied them, learning by watching, then by doing. His fingers carried the steadiness born of folding thousands of cartons. Precision was already in him. "You see," Halberd said one evening, "truth must not only be seen, it must be recorded. Eyewitnesses vanish. Memories falter. But light, captured on film or sensor, cannot lie." "So we're building a witness," Eli murmured. The professor's eyes crinkled. "Exactly. A hidden witness." They called it simply the device. It would shine ultraviolet light at the exact wavelength that triggered Helix ink, then capture the emission band with a spectral filter, recording every glowing line. The paper might appear blank to the naked eye, but on the device's screen, the contract would bloom in undeniable blue. Halberd lectured as they worked. He spoke of photoluminescence, of the Stokes shift that displaced emission from excitation, of quantum yield, the ratio of photons released to photons absorbed. Eli wrote everything in his notebook, careful letters pressed into cheap paper. Yet for all the science, what mattered most was simple: evidence. But evidence attracts danger. One evening, as Eli left the warehouse, he noticed a sedan parked across the street. The same men in suits sat inside, their silhouettes faint behind tinted glass. They weren't hiding. They wanted him to see. He walked faster. At home, his mother was coughing again, the sound ragged, tearing. He set down groceries and brought her water, pressing a hand to her forehead. Fever. She waved him off, telling him to study, but her breath rattled like the hinges of the old back door. That night, Eli lay awake, torn between fear for her and fear of the men outside. The page beneath the floorboard glowed in his imagination, taunting him. He realized he could not keep the two worlds apart much longer. If the men pressed harder, if they ever looked at his mother. He clenched his fists. He would not let her suffer for secrets she never chose. The next day at the trailer, Halberd noticed the boy's silence. "You're frightened," the professor said flatly. Eli nodded. Halberd leaned on the table. "Fear is natural, but remember, fear is not the end of reason. It is its beginning. What frightens you sharpens you." "They're watching me," Eli said. "They sit in cars. They know my name. What if they hurt my mom?" Halberd's voice softened, the gravel breaking. "Then we finish the device before they act. Once the proof exists, they cannot silence it without silencing half the world." "Half the world won't listen to me," Eli said bitterly. "They will listen to the light," Halberd answered. The following week was a blur of construction. Eli scavenged wires from junkyards, bartered for capacitors at a pawn shop, carried salvaged batteries from the school's science closet. Piece by piece, the device took shape, a rough box with exposed circuits, but powerful in purpose. On the 7th night, they tested it. Halberd placed the copied page on the table. Eli powered the device. A thin beam of ultraviolet swept across the sheet, and the screen flickered to life. There it was, the contract, glowing in spectral blue, signatures burning like stars across the page. Eli exhaled in awe. It felt as though truth itself had taken a body. Halberd's eyes shone. It works. The witness lives. But joy lasted only a moment. A sound outside, gravel crunching under tires. Both froze. Through the window, headlights swept across the trailer wall. A car door slammed. Voices murmured. Halberd's face hardened. "They've found us!" He switched off the lamp, plunging the room into shadow, only the faint blue afterglow of the page lingering. He grabbed the device, thrust it into Eli's hands. "Run," he hissed. "Back door. Now." "But no arguments. You are the keeper. They cannot catch you." Eli's chest pounded. He clutched the device to his chest, slipped through the back door, and sprinted into the desert night. Behind him, voices rose. A fist hammered the front door. The professor shouted something, too distant to catch. Then wood splintered. Eli did not look back. He ran until his lungs burned, until the lights of town shimmered faint in the distance. He stopped only when his legs buckled. Falling to the sand, clutching the device, he pressed his forehead to the earth. The desert was not silent anymore. It roared with wind, carrying fragments of a broken world. In his arms, the hidden witness pulsed faintly with stored charge, as though reminding him, "The truth is yours now." But truth, he knew, had already drawn blood. The desert gave nothing back. When Eli returned the next day, the trailer was empty. The front door hung broken on its hinges, journals scattered across the floor like fallen leaves, a chair overturned, coffee still damp on the table. But the man who had filled these walls with rough-voiced lessons and diagrams of light was gone. Professor Halberd had vanished. No blood, no note. Only silence, heavier than any evidence. Eli stood in the doorway, the device strapped tight to his backpack. His chest ached as if something had been ripped out of it. He wanted to scream, but the desert swallowed sound. Instead, he bent down, picking up a torn page from Halberd's notebook. It bore 3 words scrawled in hurried ink. "Trust the witness." Back at the warehouse, the men in suits returned. They no longer pretended to be auditors. They walked the aisles with open authority, speaking in low voices to the manager, pointing at records. Every worker noticed, but none dared ask. Eli kept his head down, folding boxes, his notebook hidden beneath the desk. Sweat pooled on his neck, though the warehouse was cold. He felt their eyes brush past him, measuring, weighing. At lunch, one of the men leaned close as he passed. "Your professor won't be teaching anymore," he said casually, almost kindly. Then he walked on, leaving Eli's tray untouched. Eli sat alone, staring at his food. He did not eat. That evening his mother asked why his hands shook. She pressed her rough fingers to his face. "You're burning yourself out, Eli. You don't need to carry everything." He almost told her about the contract, the ink, the men, but he stopped. What protection could a woman with a mop and aching lungs offer against corporations with silent cars and vanishing professors? He smiled weakly and lied, "It's just the cold in the warehouse." She didn't believe him. A mother never fully believes a lie. But she let it pass, because her own strength was running thin. The days blurred. The device remained hidden beneath Eli's bed, wrapped in cloth. At night, he powered it on, watching the contract glow across the tiny screen. It felt less like paper now, more like a living thing, breathing light into the darkness. But each time he watched, guilt grew sharper. Halbert had risked everything to place it in his hands. Now the professor was gone, perhaps forever. Eli began to wonder, was silence safer? If he destroyed the page, smashed the device, burned his notes, could he save his mother? Save himself? Could life return to folding boxes and eating soup at the small kitchen table? The temptation of forgetting was strong, but forgetting would mean betraying the one man who had believed him capable of more. The turning point came on a Thursday. The suits called a meeting of all warehouse staff. Workers stood in rows as one man spoke in clipped tones. A sensitive shipment has been misplaced. If anyone has seen unusual documents or packages, now is the time to report it. Silence will be interpreted as complicity. No one moved. The man's gaze swept the room, lingering on Eli. We are offering rewards for cooperation. Substantial rewards. One word could change your life. Eli's heart hammered. He felt dozens of eyes shift toward him. Everyone knew he was the boy who noticed things, the one who stayed late, the one too quiet for his own good. The silence stretched until it ached. Then the man smiled thinly. Very well. We will find the truth ourselves. The meeting dissolved, but suspicion remained. Eli knew the circle was closing. That night, he sat at the kitchen table, staring at his mother's tired face as she stitched a torn uniform pocket. He wanted to tell her everything. He wanted her to understand the danger, the weight of what he carried. But when he opened his mouth, all that came out was, "One day I'll buy you a house without broken windows." She laughed softly, touched his cheek. "One day, mijijo. But for now, we make do." Her cough seized her then, bending her body, and Eli felt his throat tighten. He realized silence was already costing too much. Each day she worked in chemical fumes. Each night she lay awake struggling to breathe. What future could they make do with if truth remained hidden? He returned to the device. This time, he didn't just stare at the glowing contract. He recorded it. He set up his mother's old camcorder, aimed it at the device's screen, and pressed play. The blue signatures flared alive on tape. Time-stamped, undeniable. For the first time, the witness was not just hidden in his room. It was duplicated, captured, multiplied. He whispered into the microphone, "This is Eli Moreno. The contract exists. It cannot be erased. Professor Halbert was right. The light doesn't lie." When the tape ended, he rewound it, labeled it simply Proof 1, and hid it beneath the loose floorboard with the original page. The secret was no longer silent. Still, fear lingered. Fear for his mother, for himself, for the professor whose absence gnawed at him. But alongside fear was something steadier. Resolve. Eli understood now what Halbert meant. Truth demanded cost, and Eli had decided he was willing to pay. The desert wind howled that evening as though the land itself had grown restless. Clouds, rare over New Mexico, gathered like bruises across the sky. Eli walked fast, his backpack heavy with the device. Each step kicked up dust that stung his eyes. He wasn't heading to the trailer. It stood abandoned now, silent witness to Halbert's disappearance. Tonight he had a different destination. The old community center near the school, a building no one used anymore except for town meetings. It was there the supervisors of LuxGen had called an employee briefing. A briefing at night, behind locked doors. Eli knew what it meant. The net was closing. Inside, the atmosphere was electric with unease. Warehouse workers, janitors, technicians sat in folding chairs, whispering nervously. At the front stood the two suited men, flanking the plant manager. The projector hummed, its blank screen glowing pale. "Thank you for coming," one of the men began smoothly. "We are here to address a matter of theft. Sensitive documents have gone missing. We believe someone among you has them. This person is jeopardizing not only the company, but all your livelihoods." Murmurs rippled. Workers glanced at each other. Eli sat near the back, his hands pressed tight around the straps of his backpack. Sweat dampened his shirt despite the chill. The man continued, "We ask one last time for whoever has seen these documents to step forward. If you cooperate, all is forgiven. If you refuse—" He let the threat hang. "Consequences will follow." The silence that followed was heavier than stone. And then, almost against his own will, Eli stood. Every head turned. The suits narrowed their eyes. "Yes, boy?" Eli's voice trembled at first, but he forced steadiness into it. "I saw the documents, and I can prove they exist." Gasps filled the room. His mother, standing in the back among the janitors, clutched her chest. The man's smile was thin. "You're certain you want to say that?" "Yes," Eli said. His throat was dry, but his heart beat with a strange clarity. "Because the ink doesn't lie." He stepped forward, unzipped his backpack, and lifted the device. The workers murmured. Some laughed nervously, mistaking it for a toy. The suits stiffened. Eli placed a sheet of blank paper on the projector table. He powered on the device. The ultraviolet beam swept across the page. At first, nothing. Then slowly, faint letters emerged, glowing blue, alive under the light. Words formed, signatures flared. Project Helix, NDA copy, authorized signatures. The room fell into stunned silence. One woman whispered, "Madre de Dios." On the screen behind Eli, the projector magnified the page. The contract filled the wall, the signatures burning across the room for all to see. The plant manager paled. "Turn that off." "No," Eli said. His voice grew stronger. "Everyone deserves to see." He adjusted the device, revealing clause after clause, the billion-dollar transfer, the hidden agreement, the corporate betrayal. Each line glowed with spectral certainty. No rumor, no guesswork. Proof. The suits moved forward, anger replacing charm. But the workers surged between them and the boy. For the first time, Eli saw defiance in their eyes. Years of silence, years of being unseen, suddenly given form by glowing ink. "You knew about this?" one worker shouted at the manager. "You were selling us out!" The room erupted in shouts. The suits barked orders, but no one listened. In the chaos, one of the men lunged for the device. Eli staggered back. The machine slipped in his hands, almost falling. For one terrifying second, he thought it would shatter, but his mother stepped forward, gripping the man's arm with surprising strength. "Not my son," she said, voice hoarse but fierce. The man shoved her back, but the delay was enough. Two warehouse workers seized him, dragging him away. The second man cursed and fled, slipping out into the night. Eli clutched the device to his chest, breathing hard. The screen still glowed with the truth. Police arrived minutes later, drawn by the uproar. The tape Eli had made, the projection on the wall, the dozens of witnesses, it all coalesced into undeniable evidence. The suits protested, but their words rang hollow against the luminous proof still shining. Eli stood in the center of the storm, trembling but unbroken. His mother reached him, pulling him into her arms. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to lean into her strength. That night, as officers collected statements, as the plant manager was led away in handcuffs, as workers whispered in awe of the boy who had made ink speak, Eli felt both triumph and sorrow. Triumph because the truth had been seen. Sorrow because Halberd was not there to see it. Yet as he packed the device back into his bag, he heard the professor's voice echo in memory. "The witness lives." And he understood. Halberd had not built the device. Eli had. Halbert had only lit the first spark. The rest was always the boy's to carry. The proof should have been enough. The contract glowed under ultraviolet, the signatures etched in light no one could deny. Workers had witnessed it. The police had recorded it. The camcorder tape still played, steady and unflinching. Yet, when the dust settled, the weight of authority pressed down again. By morning, the men in suits had vanished, leaving only confusion. The plant manager sat in a county holding cell, silent behind a lawyer's instructions. Reporters trickled into town, their cameras flashing across a warehouse that had never before drawn interest. And Eli, 14 years old, Janitor's son, was summoned to the courthouse. The hearing was not a trial, not yet. It was an inquiry, convened in a windowless chamber where officials in dark jackets whispered as though the truth itself were something indecent. Eli sat at a wooden table too large for him, his feet not reaching the floor. His mother sat behind him, her hands knotted together in silent prayer. Beside Eli, the device rested in its cloth wrap, waiting. At the far end of the room, a panel of 3 officials stared down. The middle one, a gray-haired man with square glasses, cleared his throat. "Young man," he said, voice clipped, "you claim to possess evidence of a fraudulent contract involving LuxGen Corporation, evidence which no one can see with the naked eye." "Yes, sir," Eli answered. "Do you understand the gravity of making such a claim?" "Yes, sir." The official leaned back. "Very well. Show us." Eli set the paper on the table. He unwrapped the device, its wires exposed, its frame crude. The officials exchanged skeptical glances. He powered it on. The ultraviolet beam swept across the sheet, and the words bloomed once again. Project Helix, NDA copy, authorized signatures. Gasps rose from the audience benches, but the panel remained stern. The man in glasses tapped his pen. That could be a trick, a parlor game. Children buy such toys at novelty shops. Eli looked up, steady. "It isn't a trick. It's science." For the next hour, he explained. He spoke of ultraviolet wavelengths, how photons of 365 nanometers struck the ink's polymer backbone. He described the Stokes shift, how absorbed energy re-emerged at 430 nanometers, visible as blue light. He used plain language, drawing diagrams on the chalkboard to show why the ink remained invisible under ordinary lamps, but revealed itself under UV. When the officials frowned, he slowed, patient as if teaching children. "It isn't magic. It's fluorescence. The molecules absorb light they can't hold, then release it as light we can see. That's why the page looks empty until you shine the right lamp." His voice trembled at times, but the logic never faltered. He spoke as Halbert had taught him, clear, precise, relentless. One official finally leaned forward. "And how do we know you didn't forge this yourself?" Eli met his gaze. "Because this ink was made in LuxGen's labs. It bonds to cellulose at the molecular level. You can burn this paper and the glow will remain. I couldn't make it in my kitchen. Only a laboratory with their equipment could." The man in glasses shifted uncomfortably. "And how do you know this?" "Because Professor Samuel Halbert taught me." The name fell into the room like a stone into water. Murmurs rippled. Some recognized it. Halbert, the disgraced scientist, the man whose career ended in whispers. "Halbert is gone," one official said sharply. "Convenient." "He's not gone," Eli said softly. "He's missing, because he told me the truth." Silence stretched. The officials conferred in low tones. Finally, the man in glasses spoke again. "Young man, you are asking us to believe that a boy from a warehouse has uncovered corporate fraud worth over $1 billion. Do you understand how unlikely that sounds?" Eli clenched his fists. He thought of his mother scrubbing floors, of Halbert's journals scattered across the trailer, of the ink glowing against the dark. "Yes," he said. "I know it sounds unlikely, but the light doesn't lie." "You don't have to believe me. Believe what you see." He lifted the page once more. The ultraviolet beam swept. The contract bloomed alive again, undeniable. This time, even the officials leaned closer, drawn by the stark glow of names and numbers burning across the paper. When the session ended, no verdict was declared. The officials promised further review, their words cautious, their eyes unsettled. But Eli had seen something in their faces, uncertainty cracking, certainty faltering. Outside, reporters swarmed, cameras clicked, voices shouted questions. Eli said nothing. His mother held his arm, guiding him through the crowd. At home that night, she whispered, "You were brave." Eli shook his head. "I was only holding the light." She touched his cheek. "Sometimes that is what bravery is." But even as he tried to rest, Eli knew this was not the end. Proof alone was not enough. Men with power would fight harder now, and without Halberd, the path ahead was darker than ever. Still, as he closed his notebook, he wrote a single line across the page. Truth doesn't need permission to exist. The desert wind shifted after the hearing. It no longer carried stillness, but tension, like the moments before a storm when the air tastes of copper and dust. Eli felt it everywhere, in the way neighbors looked at him, in the silence that followed when he entered the grocery store, in the unmarked cars parked 2 blocks from his house with engines idling low. Truth had been shown, but truth was not yet free. Luxgen's public relations machine moved fast. By sunrise the following day, newspapers carried headlines dismissing the boy's evidence as a hoax and childish fantasy. One article sneered, "Janitor's son claims to expose billion-dollar fraud." On television, a company spokesman smiled coldly. "We cannot comment on ongoing investigations, but I assure you there is no validity to these claims. Invisible contracts, invisible signatures, this is science fiction." Eli watched from his living room, the glow of the screen painting his mother's weary face. She turned it off, trembling with anger. "They're trying to break you," she said. Eli nodded. "I know." But inside, fear twisted. If people believed the company, then he was not a witness. He was a liar. The retaliation grew sharper. 2 days later, he was suspended from the warehouse without explanation. "Pending review," the manager told him, eyes averted. Friends from school avoided him. Anonymous notes appeared in his mailbox. "Stop. Before you disappear, too." Even at night, he felt watched. Shadows moved at the edge of his vision. The desert, once vast and empty, now seemed full of eyes. His mother begged him to let go. "Eli, please. They're too big. You're just a boy. I can't lose you the way I lost your father." He held her hands, rough and worn from cleaning chemicals. "Mama, if we stay silent, they win, and silence already took Dad. I won't let it take you, too." She wept, but said no more. That evening, Eli returned to the trailer. The door still hung broken, journals still scattered. But this time, something new. A single envelope, placed neatly on the table where Halberd once sketched diagrams. No name, no stamp. Eli tore it open with shaking hands. Inside was a page in Halberd's handwriting. "They will discredit you. They will corner you. But light is not meant to be hidden in one place. Share it. Duplicate it. Spread it where no hand can erase. Trust the witness, but do not keep it for yourself." At the bottom, a symbol, a triangle, the same faint mark Eli had seen on the box weeks ago. Eli pressed the page to his chest. Halberd was alive, or at least had been when this was written. and he was telling Eli the next step. So, Eli acted. He copied the camcorder tape onto 3 more cassettes at the school's media lab, staying late under the hum of old machines. He slipped one into the church mailbox, another to the town newspaper editor, and the third to a science teacher who once told him, "You think too big for this town." He uploaded fragments online from the school library computer using an alias. Within hours, small science forums buzzed with debate. Polymer fluorescence in contracts? Helix Inc., myth or reality? Experts argued, dissecting screenshots, demanding samples. The truth had left his hands, but so had his safety. That night, as he walked home, headlights flared behind him. A black sedan crept closer. A window rolled down. A voice, calm and cold. "You should have stayed silent, boy." The car surged forward. Eli dove into the ditch, rolling in dust as the vehicle roared past. His heart pounded like a drum. When he staggered up, coughing, the sedan was gone. Only tire tracks remained, carved deep into the dirt road. He stumbled home, bloodied, but alive. His mother gasped when she saw him, clutching his face, demanding answers. He told her the truth this time, all of it. The contract, the ink, halberd, the threats. She listened in silence, tears streaming. When he finished, she whispered, "Then we fight together." The next morning, the backlash hit harder. The small-town paper published his tape. The church pastor played it on a projector after Sunday service, calling it a boy's courage in the face of giants. The video spread beyond forums, picked up by local TV, then regional stations. And for the first time, the story was not about a janitor's son lying. It was about a boy making the invisible visible. But Luxgen struck back. Lawyers filed injunctions. Online forums were scrubbed. Scientists who commented favorably received sudden calls warning them to retract. Eli realized this was no longer a battle of ink and light. It was a battle of endurance. Could he hold steady while a corporation tried to erase him? He sat at the kitchen table that night, staring at the device glowing faintly, its circuits humming. His mother sat across from him, her cough worse but her eyes fierce. "Halberd said the witness can't stay with me," Eli whispered. "He said to spread it. Maybe it needs to go further. Somewhere no one can bury it." His mother touched his hand. "Then take it there." Eli looked out the window, the desert stretching endless under the stars. For the first time, he felt the wind not as threat, but as summons. The storm was not ending. It was only beginning. The town had never spoken his name so often. Some called him reckless. Others called him brave. A few called him foolish. But everyone knew who Eli Moreno was now, the boy who made ink confess. Headlines spread beyond New Mexico. Invisible contract exposed by teenager. Janitor's son shines UV light on corporate secrets. Scientists debated on television whether Helix Inc. was real. Some dismissed it as conspiracy, but others leaned forward, intrigued, scribbling notes while replaying the footage. For Eli, fame brought no comfort. He still woke at night to the sound of cars outside, still felt eyes following him down empty streets. His mother's cough worsened, echoing through their small house. Yet in the midst of fear, something else stirred. Letters. Letters from strangers. Teachers wrote asking if their students could learn from him. Retired engineers offered spare equipment. Children scrawled notes in crooked handwriting. "I want to see invisible ink, too." And in those words, Eli sensed a path forward. Not only defense, but creation. He returned to the trailer one last time. The journals still lay scattered, but he gathered them carefully, stacking them with reverence. He packed lenses, wires, fragments of circuits, pieces Halberd had touched. When he carried them into the old community center, the air changed. Dust swirled through sunlight that cut across broken windows. The building smelled of wood rot and neglect, but in Eli's mind it became something else. Possibility. "This will be the lab," he whispered. His mother, leaning on the doorframe, smiled despite her weariness. "The lab of light," she said softly. And so it began. At first it was only Eli at a folding table wiring scraps into crude detectors. But soon, others came. Children from school, curious and shy, drawn by whispers of experiments. Neighbors who once turned away now offered spare bulbs, extension cords, even old microscopes from basements. Eli welcomed them all. He showed kids how to split sunlight with a prism, how to write invisible messages with lemon juice, how ultraviolet revealed secrets ink tried to hide. Their eyes widened, laughter filling the dusty room. For a moment, fear loosened its grip. The first official visitor was a local science teacher, Mrs. Grant. She watched as Eli explained fluorescence to 10 children, his voice steady, his gestures precise. When the lesson ended, she pulled him aside. "Do you know what you're building here?" "A lab," he said simply. "No," she said. Her eyes glistened. "You're building belief." Word spread. Volunteers fixed broken windows. A retired machinist brought a drill press. An engineer from Albuquerque donated a laptop, insisting his name not be mentioned. The center's cracked walls slowly filled with light, lamps strung on wires, devices humming, diagrams taped to the boards. The children called it Eli's lab, though he always corrected them. "Not mine, ours." But deep inside, he knew it was also Halbert's legacy, reborn through his hands. Yet danger had not passed. One evening, while soldering wires, Eli found an envelope slipped under the door. Inside was a single sheet, blank at first glance. He powered the UV lamp. Words flared in cruel blue. "You think light protects you. It will only burn you. Stop before you lose everything." His hands trembled. He crushed the paper, but its glow lingered in his eyes. He realized then they had not given up. They were watching still. That night, he confessed his fear to his mother. "They'll come again," he said. "They won't stop." She cupped his face in her tired hands. "Eli, listen. They can break buildings. They can silence men. But they cannot silence truth when it is shared. That's why you must keep teaching. That's why this lab matters." Her cough racked her body then, but she smiled through it. "Every child you teach is one more witness they cannot erase." So Eli doubled his efforts. He began keeping nightly journals of every experiment, every observation. He uploaded lessons online under pseudonyms, teaching fluorescence, spectroscopy, optics. Children from other towns began visiting. Scientists sent cautious emails, praising his clarity, asking for copies of his device schematics. The lab of light became more than a room. It became a flame, fragile, but spreading. And though Eli still felt fear, he carried it differently now. It no longer pressed him into silence. It pushed him forward. One evening, as he locked the lab, he looked out across the desert. The horizon glowed faint with starlight, the wind carrying both dust and promise. He thought of Halberd, wherever he was. He thought of the suits, still hunting in shadows. He thought of his mother, coughing but unbroken. And he whispered into the wind, "The witness is alive. Not just the device, not just the tape. The witness is all of us now." The winter sun rose pale over Socorro, casting long shadows across the desert. The town was still small, still poor, still dusty, but something in it had changed. Children carried notebooks, where once they carried nothing. Workers spoke in tones not only of survival, but of learning. And at the heart of it all, the community center glowed each evening with the hum of circuits and the laughter of discovery. The lab of light had endured. Eli stood at the front of the room, 14 no longer but 15 now, taller, his voice steadier. Before him sat a dozen children, their faces lit by a UV lamp. On the wall, a lemon juice message flared to life. Truth lives in the dark until we bring it to light. The children gasped, clapped, laughed. One boy raised his hand. "Mr. Eli, is this like the contract you found?" Eli paused. The room grew quiet. His mother, seated at the back with a blanket over her shoulders, watched him. Her cough had grown weaker, her smile stronger. "Yes," Eli said finally. "It's exactly like that. Invisible things aren't gone. They're waiting to be revealed. And it's our job to find the right light." Outside, the world was still wrestling with the scandal. LuxGen's name appeared in courtrooms, their executives summoned before committees. The billion-dollar contract was dissected by lawyers and scientists alike. Halberd's name resurfaced in footnotes, cited in journals as the pioneer of Helix Inc. Yet the man himself remained absent, a shadow whose fate no one could confirm. But Eli no longer searched the desert for him. He carried the professor in his notebook, in the device, in every lesson taught under cracked plaster walls. The legacy was alive, even if the man was gone. One evening, as Eli closed the lab, a group of reporters waited outside. Microphones thrust forward, cameras flashing. "Eli, do you see yourself as a whistleblower? Do you realize you cost a corporation billions? What will you do next?" Eli blinked in the harsh light. For a moment, the fear returned, the memory of cars stalking him, of threats scrawled in invisible ink. But then he thought of his students inside, still tracing prisms of light on the wall. He answered simply, "I didn't take anything from anyone. I gave it back. The truth doesn't belong to me. It belongs to all of us." The words spread faster than any headline. At home that night, his mother held him close. "Your father would be proud," she whispered. "You've given this town more than light. You've given it hope." Eli looked at her, at the lines on her face carved by work and worry, and felt a warmth stronger than fear. For years he had believed his family was destined to remain unseen, like ink fading on blank paper. But now he understood. Unseen was not the same as gone. Some things only waited for light. Months later, a new sign hung above the community center. The Moreno-Halberd Lab of Light Children ran beneath it, their notebooks flapping in the wind. Elders of the town brought chairs, watching with quiet pride. No corporation could erase it now. It was etched into memory, into generations. On the anniversary of the night the contract first glowed, Eli stood before his students and told them a story. "Once," he said, "there was a boy who folded boxes in a warehouse. Nobody noticed him. Nobody believed him. But one day he found a page that looked empty, and when he shone the right light, it revealed the truth. That boy wasn't special. He was just willing to look. And that's what I want you to remember. The world hides many things. Don't ever believe that unseen means unimportant. All you need is the courage to shine your light." The room was silent, eyes wide, hearts stirred. Then the children clapped, the sound filling the lab like a rising tide. That night, after the students left, Eli sat alone. He powered on the device one last time. The original page still glowed faint blue, its signatures eternal, its secrets bared. He whispered, "We did it, Professor." And though no answer came, he felt the presence in the hum of circuits, in the desert wind pressing against the windows, in the ink that refused to fade. The ink had begun as a weapon of deception, but in the hands of a boy, it had become a beacon of truth. And truth, once revealed, would never vanish again. This story is dedicated to every unseen child, to every hand that worked in silence, to every voice dismissed until the light revealed its truth. May we never forget that knowledge belongs not to the powerful, but to all who dare to seek it. Thank you for listening. May the ink of truth never fade.